This to me is like the really fascinating material.
We don't know what the answer is, but we're looking for patterns.
I think we're looking at kind of a type of cosmic alchemy.
The story slowly differs.
But still, a lot of people don't know that this technology actually exists.
The possibilities here are pretty mind-boggling.
We can't just believe that it was the work of these lone troubled individuals.
Well, we are here after we've been struggling.
It's like a conspiracy theorist would look at that and say, well, the Illuminati or somebody planned this right after the last one.
Yeah. If you guys are expecting to hear Mark O'Connell, that's not who you're going to hear tonight. You're going to hear somebody else, and that's Heidi Hollis. Because last week we did the recording with Mark O'Connell and we lost it. So that's why we've been in here for the last, what have we been? It's been like 2 hours, man, that we've been fooling with this stuff.
Something like that.
And we had to connect one system and then reconnect another. But we've got backup recordings going on.
Yeah. Our backup plans got backup plans.
We got backup to the backup.
And so, I'm deathly ill too.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a good night here in Conspirinormal land. But Heidi, welcome to the show. And this
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I've known about you ever since the Ghostly Talk, the early Ghostly Talk days.
Oh, get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I enjoyed those guys. They're really good guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott L and Doug. I mean, they were a big influence on me.
Oh, I bet.
As well.
And they had fun. They had fun doing the show. Unlike a lot of people, they get too darn serious all the time, which you need to a certain extent, but my gosh. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I totally hear you on that. Yeah, you were just on the new show, the new Ghostly Talk, not too long ago, actually.
Yeah, I was excited to hear from Scott to have me back on, and it just brought it all back. It's like reminiscing. It's like, oh, it's just this warm fuzzy place in my heart for that show. That's just they're really, really good. And I wish that things had gone on the whole time, but I'm glad he's resurrecting the show.
Oh yeah, me too, for sure. One of my favorites, and I've been listening again pretty religiously as they put out new shows, and I think he's going back to like a weekly version now, so that's good too. And I think they're having more fun with it than doing it like they used to do, where they did the whole basically live podcast radio. I mean, at the time they started doing it, it was there was really no such thing as podcasting, really, if you really think about it.
True. Very true.
And
it was brand
I understand that you have done some shows in the past yourself.
Yeah, quite a few over the last, 15 years or something. I helped out on a couple of shows, and then I started my own. I was on CBS Radio, and then I jumped over to IRN, and jumped over to LNM and iHeartRadio. So I was doing up to 8 shows a week up until just a few weeks ago. LNM partially closed down, and I was doing 3 shows a week. So right now I'm just doing the one called After Hours AM.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's on Thursdays, and I have a good time. Eric Olson and Joel Sturgis, they've been doing that show for over 10 years, and I joined them for their first hour at least most of the time now. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. I really enjoy it, and boy, my email is blowing up, people looking for my show. And I'm like, I'll get back to it, I'm sure, but I'm kind of enjoying the hiatus. It's kind of cool. It's like, this is what the wonderful winter looks like out here in Chicago. Jeez.
Yeah, that's right.
Mess.
You guys just got hit by yet again, like lots of snow and cold temperatures and all of that. Yeah.
I do not know what that is. I actually put a video this morning, Facebook Live. I was like, I step out and it's all slushy, nasty, gushy. I mean, it was the exact consistency of a slushy at the 7-Eleven. I mean, you just need a little red dye and man, it was like a couple inches of it. Just gross, really nasty.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I read Jesus is No Joke,
Did you?
which I actually got quite a while ago. I actually got it when it was like, I think you put it up for free on Kindle or something.
I've done that for all my books pretty much.
and I went ahead and grabbed it, but I kind of want to focus some on that book, but
cool.
I also want to look at some of your other writings too, because I mean like I said, I mean we just talked about it, like you've been around for a long time writing about some of the paranormal stuff and some of the religious things as well. Yep. And I just kind of want to get like going into some of this, what is your background with your kind of religious background, and then kind of like your background in looking into like the paranormal? Like, how did that all start for you?
Once upon a time. No, when I was a kid, I grew up in a haunted house. So I grew up in a haunted house, and it was horrifying. It was terrifying. My mother had passed away when I was just 7 years old, and that same year, our house became just overdone with different things going on, mostly like a poltergeist-like activity thing, but then something that I guess it was equivalent to more of a shadow being like presence and dark, demonic even. So that's how I essentially was looking for answers after some of that stuff went on when I was a teenager in particular, and wanting to find some answers and know what was happening, because we were used to ghosts. Okay, we knew what, me and my siblings, we knew what it was to deal with something that was poltergeisty, and it was different when all of a sudden I had this strange memory of having seen a robotic toy clown, and I'm like, all of a sudden the memory came back to me, and I'm like standing in the kitchen, and my sister was sitting there, and I'm like, whoa, do you remember that when we were kids when we saw this robotic toy clown? And she looked up at me with such horror in her eyes, like, I thought that was a nightmare. I'm like, we don't share the same dream, you go over there and draw what you saw, and I'll draw what I saw, and it coincided. So I knew that this was something beyond ghostly. And so I was kind of keeping my eyes open for finding answers about, well, what the heck could that be? A robotic toy clown? That's not a ghost. It was just abnormal. And it took a while, but I came across hearing of toys and whatnot being put out for kids to lure them by different alien beings. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this so that's what led me over towards looking into dark alien eyes. But I was raised Methodist. I wasn't like Methodists, they're rather laid back. It's like come one come all, really really joyful, kind of looking for inspiration type of faith driven folks. And it wasn't like it was drilled in me. I mean, I just I enjoyed having that notion that somebody has my back, even if it's something that's invisible. And I dealt with invisible things, so I knew of different forces. And in all honesty, I couldn't imagine have gone through my childhood without having some kind of faith and background. And but I'll tell you, as as you go off to college, and I didn't know anybody who went home, went to sleep early on a Saturday night just to get up early for church during, for while you're in your college years. And I was starting to witness a lot of strange things. I mean, from UFOs to alien-like phenomena, and just really strange, bizarre things, and even like out-of-body experiences, I guess you could call it. Not necessarily near-death experiences at that time, though I'm pretty sure I'd had some. And so I started to grow a distance, I guess you could say, from my my religion. I've never been an overly religious person, but faithful, yes. I would use that weak term of spiritual,
Sure.
It's like I'm Christian. It's like, forget it. It's like that's just how I feel now. It's like, look, it took me a while to come back full circle to realize I needed my faith. I needed my faith. In order to combat some of the darkness I was facing. I honestly was really surprised that that I had even kind of stepped away from keeping that. I guess it was more ritualistic, the prayers and going through the motions and stuff. I had my faith in God, but I felt that Jesus was a character in the Bible that had done this thing, and one day he'd come back. Little did I know that. This is important to know. In my first book, The Secret War, I wrote while I was in college, and I'd put in there that because I'd witnessed so many odd things and seen angelic like beings, and a lot of people talking about, oh, I see Jesus in a tree trunk, I see him in a bowl of soup, and I was like, oh my gosh, if Jesus were around, I think I would have seen him by now. That's exactly what I wrote in my book, The Secret War. And I equated it to, seeing a hippo in the clouds. And
now, that was before you actually had the Jesus encounters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it was. And I was trying to get the message out about, these shadowy beings and what they were doing, shadow people and Hat Man and all this stuff. And here I had essentially bashed the notion that Jesus was, in everybody's soup. And, and just before, and I'll tell you, I wrote that book in 97, The Secret War, where I named the shadow people and stuff. And it took me 4 years to get it published because, I could name names, let me tell you. Some really big names out there who promised to publish my book and did not. And I mean, these are other paranormal and UFO authors who just so happen to have a publishing company of their own. So it got circulated quite a bit. So the shadow people name might have been leaked out by one of them, who knows, before the book came out in 2001. It took me a while, but yeah, so I mean, it took me a while to get that book out, but just beforehand, just before I put it out, I had my first encounter with Jesus that just, I mean, it changed everything. And I had to rewrite parts of the Secret War book because of it, and I was glad to do it.
Yeah, I want to get to that, but I want to talk to you about like the Hat Man and the shadow people. Mm-hmm. And would you consider yourself in a way kind of like a medium, or like anybody in your family kind of like that growing up? Or
I'm too ordinary to have a title like that.
Gotcha.
I just, people have told me, oh, that's what a medium does. I'm like, yeah. My name's Heidi. I don't know. I have bad luck. I see a lot of stuff sometimes. There's something, I don't know what it is. There's something in the family. We could just all be really bad with our luck. But I really don't know. I don't go looking for trouble. I don't go looking for weirdness. I don't look for Jesus popping up, that's for sure. It's kind of like when you get a deja vu and you're like, whoa, it is that surprising to me because I never anticipate whatever the heck comes my way. And things have calmed down because I lived in a hotbed of activity or something because, man, I'd had enough. I mean, one house I was in just had nightly visitors, and I really just put it out there to the ethers, like, leave me alone. I don't care why you died. I'm not here to fix you, and it might seem cruel to psychics out there who are just like, oh, they just need a little TLC. I think that's just not fair to always impress that upon the living. And yeah, so I just and when I put my foot down to slow that roll of ghostly stuff, other things slowed down. So it was like once you close that door, everything squeezes through the same door, I guess. But it's been okay. I mean, it's not like everything has ceased, that's for sure. It's just easier to swallow.
Sure. And like, when did you encounter like the Hat Man being, like the shadow people? Like, what was your kind of first encounter with that? Like, how did that happen?
Shadow people, the first one that I personally saw, that I have categorized to definitely be shadow people. I was living down in, I was out of state. I'm from Wisconsin, and
Okay.
I was living in Iowa at the time. And I was staying with a family friend, and it was broad daylight. She and I are walking along, and oh gosh, I don't know what year that was, but she and I were walking along, and and I'm like, she's talking, and I swear I'm seeing something in the corner of my eye, and I turn, and I see this big black mass jump from tree to bush to whatever, and it's following us. And I'm just like, I'm just not, I just can't believe what I'm seeing. I'm like, I'm seeing a black mass of something. We get to our destination, and it followed us the whole way there. And then when we go to come back to her house, this thing followed us again. And by the time we got in the door, I mean, I was just bursting from the seams to tell her what the heck I saw. And I'm like, I grabbed a piece of paper. I mean, we're still standing in the threshold of the doorway of the house. I'm like, I don't know what I just saw, but I saw this thing, and I drew what I've deemed to be called the head and shoulder shadow. Um, and I show her this, and I'm thinking that, oh, and this thing looks like almost like a hulky man with its head directly connected to its shoulders, and and I show it to my friend, and I'm thinking she's gonna start cracking up, like, what's wrong with you? And she takes a look at it, and she goes, oh, I don't know, that guy. Yeah, he's been following me for years. I don't know what's his deal. And I'm like, what? And then she goes to her dad, hey dad, look, he's back. He's like, oh yeah, is he back? Oh man, and I'm just in shock. And I'm like, you guys have dealt with this thing? I'm like, I mean, I saw this, and it wasn't until I went up the stairs. I wanted to go grab my stuff, and I mean, I don't even know how to describe the kind of terror that I was met with when I went upstairs to grab my things, and it was like an attic basement, an attic bedroom, and I grabbed my things. I turned around to leave the room, and that thing was blocking my way out of the room. So I mean, face to face, and to say that your cells and you are telling you this, it was like my soul knew he wanted to kill me, and I knew if I swung at him or ran, he was somehow going to succeed in this, or unless I died of a heart attack. But yeah, so that was the first time.
So you basically kind of had to stand your ground, kind of.
I did, but I knew that I had to resort to saying a quiet prayer over and over, and kind of closed my eyes,
Yeah.
and walked through him, because he was not going to move. I mean, he was just heaving over me, and I mean, just red glowing eyes. I mean, just horrifying, horrifying. When I got to I mean, I slowly walked. I mean, it took everything I had to walk to the top of the stairs, and I mean, by the time I got to the stairs, my legs were just jelly. I mean, I just like pretty much walked my arms and dragging my legs, and I just fumbled down the stairs, and boom. And my friend, comes to see, I hit the door, and she had to open up the door. And she was like, what happened? I'm like, I had no air, and all I could say was, it's upstairs, and she just looked and helped pick me up and slammed the door. I'm like, oh my God, it was horrifying. It was horrifying. So yeah,
No,
not a good thing. But that was my introduction to him.
So this was the Hat Man. You could see, like, I mean, when people describe the Hat Man, they said that he has like you can see, like, is it like a?
That's not the Hat.
That's not the Hat Man. Okay.
That was not the Hat Man. That was the head and shoulder shadow being. The Hat Man was is a different entity. When I first introduced shadow people and the Hat Man, I called him the Hat Man Shadow. I had several categories that I put shadow people in. I categorize the Shadow Cat, Shadow Cloud, Shadow Streak, and Head and Shoulder Shadow, and then Hat Man Shadow. And now the only thing that was really strange when it came to Hat Man, I had not experienced him It was my college roommate who did, and we shared this 2-bedroom apartment, and pretty regularly we would have something crazy going on. And this one night she shrieked like somebody was murdering her, and I was like, I bolted towards her room, and the when I swung the door open, I don't know how to describe to you, like, it's something out of a horror film to see a person in so much fear. She was crouched into the corner of the room, trying to make herself as small as she can. Just, the death scream, pointing and saying, "The man, the man, the man." And I'm like, now she had a door in her room that opened outdoors to the porch, and I'm like, thinking somebody broke in. I'm like, what man? And I'm just like looking, I'm checking the locks. I'm like, oh, everything's locked up. I'm like, what's going on? I'm looking around, and she couldn't even get her words together. And when the first words, she's like, "He disappeared when you opened the door." And I'm like, what? And she was a great artist, and she's the one who drew all these drawings for my websites, and the famous drawings that everybody has kind of ripped off all over and took off the copyright. Man, put it in their books. Like, that takes a lot of nerve. My God.
Weren't you one of the first to kind of talk about this, if not the first?
I was the first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And since you hear about it a lot, but like this was back like what, in the mid 90s that you were talking about this.
I sure did. And it's like, I don't know. It's like, copyright says it all. That's all you got to say. It's like, it's like, really, it's like, no, you're jumping on the bandwagon. I'm like, do you know what I went through to get word of this out there? Because people poo-pooed the notion of, what is it? Shadow people. It's what you make that up. And it's like, no, I really didn't. It's like, the first opportunity that I'd spoken on it widely on Coast to Coast AM.
Yeah.
I at that point, I was not aware how widespread the phenomena had already become. I got slammed with hundreds of thousands of emails. At the time, I had AOL, and AOL would take your emails and delete them if you had too many. They were deleting and loading up, deleting and loading. They were just, I lost so many, but just in the thousands. And, it cracks me up. I forget which show I was on, some TV show that I was talking about these beings. And they asked me, how many of these have you, investigated or talked to people about or received emails? I'm like, thousands and thousands, I told them. Do you know, they dubbed me and said, Miss Hollis has investigated dozens and dozens. No. I'm like, wow. The downplay that goes on with this phenomena, it's ridiculous. But so I've been talking about this stuff for a very long time. And it's only getting worse. It really is. I used to, like I said, I categorized the Hat Man as a shadow being, but I changed that. But still, it's stuck, and people keep referring to him as a shadow being. He is not. I just call him the Hat Man now, but people will say Hat Man Shadow because what I said before. But he is not.
So is he more of like a kind of like a solid looking, more 3-dimensional?
Oh, he sure the heck can be. Yeah.
Okay.
He sure can be. He can go into a shadow-like format, I guess you could say. But he's different. He is so different in what he does and what he says. His approach and his feel, his vibe. He is the director of shadow beings. But there is, so far, appears to be one Hat Man. Yeah. But he's different. He's something else.
Is he more? I guess that you would describe him as more malevolent.
Oh, I'd say so.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you say the Prince of Malevolence? I guess the Prince of Darkness, because he will claim that if he talks to you, he will tell you he is. He's something else. And now shadow people are okay. Shadow people, they like to avoid. They don't like to be spotted. They really don't. If they're spotted, sometimes they'll pounce on you or charge you or choke you or whatever. They like when you're isolated. So, but Hat Man, he'll wait to get the respectful fear that he's looking for out of you. He'll wait till you get a good look at him, and he'll even lean in within an inch of your face and of your life and smile. And he's a nasty bastard. Oh, he is something else. And yeah, he takes great pride in being recognized for the presence that he gives and the feel that he gives. And it is something to be reckoned with, I tell you, to be in the presence of such a thing. And I had not, for all this while, not experienced him. I'd had him be behind me. I'd had people near me experience him. And I know it's a direct result of what it is that I work in, but he never came at me. He would try to go after other people. And in fact, I didn't address what I was collecting and seeing when it came to him as far as the emails. Like pretty early on, people were distinguishing the difference between him and shadow people. And every time I went to go and write a book about it, I would get calls and emails from my friends and family saying, Heidi, what are you working on? I'm like, why? I can't sleep. I'm seeing things. I'm having nightmares. I feel like I'm dying. It's like, so I backed off for other people's sake. And then I was like, you know what? You guys got to find a way to protect yourselves, because I've got to take this on. The level of just sick crap that this thing has been doing to people just got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. So yeah, so I approached it, and this is interesting to know. Right before I put that book out is when he came at me. He never did before, but he came at me, and he let me know he was really ticked. So yeah, so he made his presence be known. But I'll tell you, this is an important factor to know. I mean, you guys have heard of Eric Knudsen, who created Slender Man. I have since heard that he developed Slender Man based off from the Hat Man.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Oh, it's just, it's a freaking Hat Man without a hat, for crying out loud. I'm like, yeah, I could see the resemblance there, Eric, and how he likes to go after kids and the things that he incites. Now, you heard of those two little 12-year-old girls who attacked the other 12-year-old girl?
Actually, I was about to ask you about that. I mean, you're fairly, I'm sure you're fairly close geographically to all that, so.
Oh, just a bit. Just a bit. And I live in Chicago now, but my family is still out there in Wisconsin. And, 2 weeks after I put out my book, The Hat Man, and I mean, when I say the Hat Man challenged me, just before I put the book out, I mean, he came at me. I'm a therapist, came at my patients, came at coworkers. I mean, in front of everybody. I mean, just unbelievable. I have it indicated in the book because I threw that in there just before I published it. And 2 weeks after I put that book out, those little girls attacked that other little girl about a 15-minute, 20-minute drive from my family's home.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, was that a coincidence? I don't lean towards coincidences, especially what he did just before I put the book out. And, those two little girls, one of them became convinced Slender Man was real because she said when she was real young, she saw Slender Man, but I think she saw Hat Man. So she was pretty darn convinced that he was real. And
did you ever see the documentary
yes,
that HBO put out about it?
I did. I saw.
Because apparently the one that was the ringleader, she was schizophrenic, or they've diagnosed her as schizophrenic. But to me, that almost makes me think that, people that, I mean, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I kind of feel like people that are have schizophrenia, that they almost have maybe a more of a connection to the other side. in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you look at William Stillman's books about autistic children, they also are showing extra sensory as far as the other side and the connection. So, working as a therapist, I've worked with many schizophrenics, and I hear constantly about what sounds like alien abduction,
Yep.
shadow people, and Hat Man phenomena. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my goodness. It's like, okay, imagine if you were alone and you're being told you're imagining things and something keeps trying to kill you on a nightly basis, which can happen, by the way, with these entities. And you would kind of lose a screw or two. I mean, people don't have the support always. And I think that's the atrocity going on. And I am hoping to change that we could talk about these things more casually and more openly, because when every time you laugh at somebody or call them nuts, you're driving them to go inwards and get depressed and reach out to somebody like me on the opposite side of the planet, who's willing to hear them out. But it's like we need to give the support where they're causing mental illness, suicidal ideation. I mean, so many things are being inspired because these people are being isolated, and that is one of the number one moves of Hat Man and shadow people, is to isolate people so they can conquer them.
I read a article about these people that were helping out schizophrenic people, and they were actually taking them to quote unquote more primitive societies, and they were kind of introducing them to shamans in that culture, and then they were becoming kind of like a shaman in that culture themselves, and they seemed to thrive better in that setting than being in kind of like this clinical modern day setting. I mean, it's fascinating, but I think that underscores is this whole idea of how these altered states are kind of a gateway to all to kind of like the other side of the coin, basically. And right. The Hat Man and the shadow people and all that. I don't know, the role of sleep paralysis as well in all this. Has that something that you've experienced?
Oh boy, that whole I cringe when I hear the word sleep paralysis, because they've somehow sterilized a very spiritually inclined experience into some kind of clinical diagnosis yet again.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like,
I totally agree.
Yeah, I'm like, give me a freaking break. You mean all these people are seeing the same freaking thing, and we're just all somehow, imagining that? That's just a bunch of bull. I don't care how you scoop it and put a cherry on top. It's bull crap right in the middle. It's just such silliness. I'm like, come on now. I mean, and especially, I think it's another way to dumb down society, very much like the UFO phenomena. Because if I walk into a room, and this happens a lot, I practice as a therapist. I go into different facilities, and God forbid, a lot of the therapists will Google me, like, oh, that's that therapist. Oh, and I'm like, okay, so they start telling me their stories, and 9 times out of 10, when they say I've seen a ghost, guess what it is? It's the Hat Man, and they're paralyzed. And it's like, so not always though, not always. They just say they saw a ghost, and it's so cool when there's like 2 or 3 of them, and they're realizing at the same time, what? Yeah, you're describing the same thing. And I pull up my website. Did it look like this? And they're like crapping their pants. It's like, whoa! It's like, yeah, that's the guy. I named him. How about that? What? So it's just it's. Can you imagine the panic if the medical society did not step forward to deem it as such? Sleep paralysis. It's okay. Take some drugs. You could sleep right through it and have your soul ripped from your loins. I mean, my God, it's a silliness.
Sounds like you've kind of combined this role that you have as this paranormal author, and then you're kind of like your other life in occupational therapy, and kind of like you see how sometimes they can match and sometimes they don't match. And like, I think that's great. I mean, you can bring some of your own ideas into what you do as a profession.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. We do counseling, and we work with people who have had different disabilities or illnesses suddenly bestowed upon them, and try to get people to become as independent mentally, cognitively, and physically. So it's like looking at the whole of a person to function in this world. And so it's like we've had to take a lot of psychology and a lot of anatomy, phys, and neuropsychology and all that good juicy stuff. So it's like I have a good understanding of a lot of different things, and I've having been involved in the paranormal world most of my life, for crying out loud, it's like I could see different perspectives, and I know the pain of feeling isolated when people say they don't believe in you when they may be experiencing the same or worse, which was a situation for my father. Oh man, he just thought it was hilarious later when he told us that as a kid, oh, you kids are just making this stuff up, and here he was experiencing the worst of it, and here we're adults, and he finally chuckles it out about what he had experienced, and it's like, what? You made it seem like we were going crazy, and he's like, well, if I told you kids I was terrified, you guys would have never stayed in the house. It's like, oh my God, So yeah, it's I know the feeling. So it's like I try to let people know, it's like, look, I am not one to judge. I will not judge you, and I think that makes people comfortable enough to approach me with whatever it is they've experienced, because I'm not here to prove or disprove, but when people are ready to accept something, great. But the ultimate goal, since you have read my Jesus book,
Yep.
ultimate goal is not about the physical. It is not. And these aliens, these shadow beings, Hat Man, all of that bogus all boils down to matters of the soul. And it's so weird to come back full circle to the time sitting upon the church pews at my church and go, oh my God, this is that? Yeah, it is. It's like, call it what you want, demons, angels, aliens. If you close your eyes, they all kind of feel out to be the same. And that's what you've got to get to the bottom of, and understand that it's all related. It really is. And it's so clear for me now. I am truly thankful to have had the experiences that I've had. They may seem like they're so wide and varied, and I'm like, they really aren't. They really kind of fall in line. So
I absolutely agree with you on that. It's I'm the same way in that, looking at something not in like the alien stuff. I mean, we're pretty non-extraterrestrial hypothesis here, so I totally buy
gotcha.
all that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you feel kind of the same way about it.
Yeah, you could say that. They are. I mean, why would aliens leave the room? I think I was one of the first to talk about that, but then I heard that there were others that I like from the 60s or something. But talking about aliens coming at you, and you say the name of Jesus and they leave? I mean, what? Why does that work?
Yep.
Why does that work?
Yep.
That's, come on. And David Jacobs, I had him on my show, and he wrote the book The Threat. And he's like, no, it didn't work. See, you say the name of Jesus, and you already had your alien experience, and you think they left, but they actually did their thing and left after you said it. It's like, oh, come on, no. I'm like, no, I have seen and heard this myself. Jesus' name, get out of here. And they do. I didn't black out, and aliens got me. No. So.
Yeah, you hear that again and again and again. But you've actually encountered the man himself, so that's where I want to talk about on that. Is, how did this happen where you started having these encounters with Jesus?
Oh, all I could think of is why he came, because of people like, why you? And I'm like, why not me? Why not you? I had that book, The Secret War. Like I said, it was written. I was just tweaking it here and there, waiting to get it published, as was promised by so many different people. And in the midst of that is when I had my first encounter, and I just like to think that Jesus saw I was a halfway decent person and didn't want me to mess up so royally, because here I was about to influence a lot of people with a self-published book on shadow people, a name that I just slapped on these weird dark things. I mean, who would think it would reach the globe the way that it has? So I guess he's all knowing, so he was like, "Oh, I better save her because she's about to go to hell if she doesn't get this corrected." So I mean, honestly, but I mean, and I'll tell you the first experience if you want. I know you know it, but people listening probably don't. So I was in college, and I worked at a bakery. So I would go and work like 5 in the morning to like noon, and come home, take a quick nap, and like go to school. So it was like, and it was one of those days. I think I was taking a summer class or something, because this was like July, and I came home. I told my college roommate, I'm like, turn your TV down. I'm gonna go take a nap. It's like, okay. So I came home, and I mean, it was just as drastic as I'm telling you. I went to lay down on the bed, and you know when you go to lay down, you pull your blankets up or whatever, you put your pillow, fix it. I sat on the edge, and I went to swing my legs over to lay down, and boom, I hit the floor. I'm like, whoa, how did I miss the bed? Like, I did not fall asleep. I did not get to lay on the bed. I hit the ground, and I hit so hard. I'm like, ooh, what's wrong with me? And I'm like straightening myself up. I'm getting up. I'm like, holy crap, where am I? Where am I? And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, it was so, it was such a strange thing to suddenly realize I'm standing on the porch in front of my parents' home. And I'm like, how did I get here? I'm looking around, and I'm like, I look to my left. My parents live out in the country, and so they have a rather long driveway, and I see this man at the end of the driveway. And I was planning to meet with a family friend named Quincy. And I see this man at the end of the driveway. I'm like, is that Quincy? I'm like, yeah, Heidi, somehow you came here. You're gonna meet with this family friend, and it's like, yeah, that's you got. How did you get here? I don't know. But anyways, here comes Quincy, and I mean, he did not even get real close before this sense of recognition smacked me. And I mean, being my silly self, I put my face in my hands like, oh my God. I was like, oh my God. And like, he comes right in front of me, and he says, hello. Like he's going to talk about the weather or something. And I'm like, and I'm still palming my face going, hello. And he's like, do you know who I am? If you knew who I was, you would not hesitate to say it. And I mean, I took my hands away from my face, and I'm stuttering. I'm like, well, you're Jesus. And I don't speak Spanish. I don't know why I called him Jesus. And I look up at him, and he said, yes, I am. And I mean, if it was stereotypically, like I saw a off-white robe. I saw a bright light from behind his head that shadowed his face. I saw shoulder-length hair that, as the light came through, kind of made it a little bit light brownish, but it was dark. And it was such a I get goosebumps every time I think about it or talk about it. And he starts telling me about his life and what he aimed to do, and how he aimed to do so much. And again, I am me going, oh my God, in my head, this is Jesus. And I'm like, and he's talking, and I cannot concentrate because it's Jesus, for crying out loud.
So did he look kind of like the stereotypical Jesus? Did he have the long hair and beard? I mean, did he look different, or?
I didn't see a beard. I mean, like, I couldn't see any features of his face. It was literally shadowed. There was such a bright light. It was like looking into the sunshine, but it was
Okay.
behind him, and you could see the perfect outline of shoulder length hair, and it was perfectly black, perfectly black. So it was really something. But um, this is the funny part. Like, while he was talking about his whole life, and I mean, and it was like I heard the words, but it was coming to me in a different form. Like, I was just sucking it up, but I was looking around going, Heidi, this is really going on. I'm touching my lap. I'm like, you are here. You are here. And then I'm like, and then I realize I'm looking down. I'm like, why is the ground so close to me? I'm like, oh, I'm on my knees. I don't even remember going on my knees. And then he got quiet. Like, he knew I wasn't paying attention. And I'm like, and I'm stuttering again. And I go, well, what do you want me to do? And and he said, and he helped me like stand up, and he's like, first you need to show us some things. I'm like, us? I'm like, oh my God, he's talking about his daddy. And yeah, it was quite the experience. So it's really, really just nothing beats those experiences. Nothing. Because the amount of love that comes off from him, there are just no words that suffice. And I tell everybody, and they're like, well, how do you know it was him? I'm like, I could have been blind and seen it was him, because every single morsel of my cells screamed his name, just screamed his name. And what a beautiful feeling to be able to witness him. And I mean, all I kept telling people is after I saw him is, Jesus is no joke. And that's why I named the book that, because I was like, wow, I was blown away. And I still am to this day, fortunately.
I mean, it definitely sounds like it. I mean, it does sound like this was a very profound experience. I mean, for sure.
Oh,
but just listening to you relate it tells me that you, I mean, that you still, and this is more than one experience.
Yeah.
I mean, not many people get to see this.
Yeah. It's it's so strange. It's like, he came by a few more times. I put 4 different visitations in the book, and I had a couple of other since then, but not like, it wasn't like he was all chatty. I've heard of these books of people like, oh, I saw Jesus, and here are the 50 pages of things he said. I'm like, good Lord, he must have known my memory couldn't have remembered all that, because his presence speaks volumes, and words are not even necessary, really. You got it because his presence just floated it towards you. And I just, I feel very lucky to have had the experiences. But you know what? In thinking about what I am facing with shadow people and the Hat Man of all freaking things, if I didn't have those encounters, there is no way I could be doing what I'm doing now, because my faith, there are no doubts. There are no doubts. I have no doubts about him, because I got to have those experiences. And I get asked all the time, oh, Hat Man, oh my God, I've had the Hat Man experiences. It's like the devil himself is looking into your soul. How can you sleep at night? Are you terrified every day? And I'm like, I sleep great. I have no problems. It's like, I have no doubts in the presence of Jesus and God that they have my back to the fullest. And I'm good. I'm good. And I think that helps other people to realize they can be good too. And I think I sent you the title of my newest books, The Other F Word: How to Find Faith and Laugh at Yourself While Trying, because I was like, I kept getting these people who are like, okay, so the devil's been coming in my bedroom every night. What do I do? And the shadow people minions are around, and then they say, I'm not into that faith thing, but so what do I do? I'm like, well, throw a shoe at it then. You don't believe in anything. It's like, grab a big rock. I don't know. It's like, so, but I find a lot of these people, they were Catholic, and they've gave up their religion for whatever reason and now they're Buddhist or whatever. And I'm like, you are looking into the armpit of hell, who's placing their bets on you that they're going to get your soul, and you know it. They know it. And you're going, but I don't get into that. And it's like, I'm like, how can I get people to understand it's okay to say you're a Christian, and it's okay that you don't feel like you got to sit in a church to be okay in your faith. I don't go to church, but I am really good where I'm at. And so the other F word, what it is, it's essentially describes the different levels, and I'm a cartoonist too, so it's got a lot of comics in it, and it's really silly. You would love it. So it's just, it's like faith feet. It's like, oh, this is the way things got to be done. I'm gonna stand here on this spot, and everything better move around me to make me feel good about my faith. And like faith frump. Different definitions to say, the silliness of where we're at. And then the last 10 chapters is like where we can get to, and taking baby steps and finding the different levels and identifying where you're at. So, because in the face of the demons coming at people, and it's not just a possibility, it's a threat that at some point they will get you. They will come visit and check you out. And I'm not kidding. And it's sad to say, but get okay with your faith. It's okay. It's okay to be flawed in it. You don't have to be perfect. For crying out loud, who made us? He knew we were goofed. It's okay.
Right, right. I think the saying is like, he takes you as you are. Yeah, that's as I understand it. I mean, you look at what, when Jesus was around, and the stories, and the tax collectors and prostitutes and all that.
Those are his friends.
Right. Washed people's feet, that were considered lowly in society, and all this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he had a sense of humor. That was one thing I got from him when I saw him that first time. He laughed at me. He laughed at me. And that laugh was so light, but it meant so much, because I'm like, this dude has a sense of humor. I dig that. That is really cool. So yeah, I mean, I say Jesus has jokes, because there are some things that you just look at in life and go, really? Really? That had to happen that way? I don't know.
Jesus has jokes.
Jesus has jokes. He does.
So,
he does.
How did the other encounters come about? And I understand too that you also had these visions of heaven and also visions of hell. Yeah. And Jesus was involved in one of those visions. Yeah, he was. And it's so bizarre. It's like sometimes when I think about these things, but when they happen, it's such a part of me that it's not bizarre. I don't know. It's so weird to how to put it. But yeah, I would have these memories of going to this heaven-like place out of nowhere, and I don't know why. I don't know how. I'm suspicious some of them might have been near-death experiences as a kid, because I had severe seizures. And they didn't think I'd live past the age of 10 or whatever. I'm still here. And it's like, I don't have seizures anymore. I don't. It's just one of those things, and it's so rare. They can't, doctors are baffled. Like, what? How'd that happen? Like, ask Jesus. He has jokes. I don't know. But yeah, so I'd had these out of body, I guess, and I would just come back with these cool memories of going to these crystal-like buildings that look like ancient Roman or Greek buildings, and teachings would happen inside of them, and it literally had carved bench like seating that was like a half circle, and I was really floored as a kid to see this, but I would just tell my kid sister and be like, oh, I had this thing last night, I guess, and just tell her about it, and she'd go, oh, neat, and just go about our days and our lives. But as an adult, having these same kind of experiences, and it's weird, because I can't say I had a dream about it. I would suddenly have the memory of it, and I just don't know what to say. I really don't, because all of a sudden I've got a memory of having been there and what I saw,
and I don't get it. But as far as the hell encounter that I had with Jesus, it was the last encounter that I had with him that I put in that book. And wow, what a doozy is all I could say. I was aiming to get hypnotically regressed. I wanted to remember some missing time that I had. Well, it wasn't so much a missing time. It was just another mystery. Let's put it that way. And so
Gotcha.
this world-renowned he was a professor of psychology, and he was offering to do this hypnosis session, and he's like, I'll just let you put you in a relaxed state and let you go explore. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get goosebumps. As soon as I closed my eyes, I don't even know how to say, boom, right next to my eyes were the most magnificent blue eyes. Just, and it's like sky blue, like with the light behind it. And I mean, I remember the professor walking me down some stairs and but it was boom, he's right there. And I was like, it's him. I just had no words. It's like I couldn't. It was just so overwhelming. And he walked me through this garden that was like placed in between mountains, like a park almost, with paths. And he took me to this path, and it was like a tunnel inside one of the mountains. And oh, I just got a cold chill. It's like I remember him guiding me down this crouched tunnel that had like roots from the vegetation like hanging and like almost hitting my face as I was going through, and it's getting darker and darker, and I'm like, it's to say your fear started to creep up on me. I couldn't help but to have it, but then to know he was so near, and I'm like almost reaching to touch his robe as he's kind of going ahead of me, and he comes to an end, and we looked out across this bridge, and if you could call it a bridge, it was like a rock bridge, a stone bridge, but almost looked like a natural formation, and like free fall on either side of it. And it's weird. It's like it's so strange to say that I saw gates. I saw gates that surrounded this bridge reached another platform, and this platform had a gate around it, and there was free fall darkness after this edge, and there was something pacing back and forth behind that gate, and it was a creature of some kind, and as if it saw or felt the presence of Jesus, this thing started pacing back and forth like crazy, like, oh no. And I looked across the bridge, and I looked at Jesus, and I was just like, no. I knew he was giving me an invitation for a tour of hell. And I was like, I'm good. No, I don't need to go. I don't need to go over there. And I was like, I remember this place. And it was like a really cool like acknowledgement from him, like he was proud that I got it. And it was like he wanted to remind me what I was working towards to it's kind of cool to reminisce about this right now, just so you know, because it's like I haven't very rare do people call and ask me to talk about this book and these experiences.
Sure.
They just want to talk about the dark shadow and Hatman stuff. So it's like,
dude, this was the one that really, this was what really fascinated me, that you had written all these books about kind of in this paranormal vein, and kind of like that was what you were so well known for in the community, and then you come out with a book about these Jesus encounters. And when I think it was some show, I think it was Darkness Radio, maybe you might have talked about it long time ago. But I was just like, wow, I mean, that is really fascinating that she has this, that you're able to put that book out and in that community too, you know?
Oh, yeah, and not care what people thought.
Right,
really,
right.
there was no way I was going to hold back. And I was on Coast to Coast, and I'll tell you, I remember what George Norrie told me, because the first time I went on to go talk about this book, just prior to that interview, somebody had come on his show and claimed to be Jesus and really ticked off a lot of listeners, and he got a lot of crap for it. Yeah. So, and then here I come on like the following week, and people were like, totally like, don't even have anybody talking about Jesus anymore. My 3-hour interview turned into a 15-minute one because he didn't want to deal with the backlash. And then he wanted me to come. Yeah, yeah. They didn't tell me that, but I knew what it was. I knew what it was because I'd heard about it. But they were being very polite about it. I was like, I understand what's going on. I knew. But then when I did get to go on to talk about the show, talk about on his show about the Jesus book, he said, Heidi, you're known for the Hat Man and Shadow People and aliens, and now you got a book on Jesus. Are we losing you? I said, losing me to what? Jesus? I said, one thing you should never be ashamed about is to say that you're a Christian or whatever your religious belief is. And I said, I am fine and proud to be where I'm at and how I stand. And I think that that was a crying shame that what happened early on, and people who were interested in these topics, they were told, choose one, believe in aliens or believe in the one true God. I'm like, why can't you have both? I mean, you're not worshiping the alien, are you? It's like, it's okay. It's really okay. And I'm like, I've never been New Age. And I really regretted and resented that people would try to associate me as such, because, I had backed off from my faith, I guess you could say the religion part, but I'd never not believed in God. But I came full force to talk about this topic after my encounters, and I would not have the nerve to even talk about this stuff had he not shown up. Because let me tell you, I went to school for something really difficult, and I would give up my grades to not have to speak publicly for a lecture or anything, to a presentation. I would not. I was too shy. I really was. And I was like, but when he came to me and he told me, you need to finish your book. And he said, and the book was done, The Secret War. He was talking about the Secret War book when I saw Jesus at first time. And he said, do not worry what others say. Know that I'll be there to give you the words. And for crying out loud, every time I come to do a radio show or talk somewhere, I look up to the heavens and I say, you promised to give me the words, and now I'm holding you to it, because I have nothing to say. I have zero to say. It's like, I'm just hoping to, fill the role and the need of, whatever it is that's needed of me, in hopes to bring some answers and some calm, and to bring people back to their faith, for crying out loud. Ugh.
Do you think that's why Jesus chose you, or do you feel like there's more to that? Because I guess the big question is, anybody that would be asking, listening to this, or this thinking, why would be like, why did they choose her? Or why did they not choose me? Or why did they not choose this other person? Like that's a big question. I would think that people would have.
Oh, it's so crazy though, because I'm not one to keep things to myself like that. You know what I mean? It's like, whoa, I was totally, as a kid, I think it started. I mean, I was 7 years old, and haunted things started happening. I wasn't shy about it. I talked about it. Me and my sisters, we talked about it. And so I guess I don't guess, he knows me. He knew that I wouldn't be shy about it. And, when I spoke about it, I am not kidding you, one of my brothers and one of my sisters both come forward to say, well, so did I. I saw Jesus too. What? How do you keep that to yourself? And as I go through life, oh, I had a Jesus encounter. Why are you keeping this to yourself? He's been busy. He talks to a lot of people. Just people don't feel comfortable to share it. And I'm like, if there was one person in your life who you trusted 100%, and they come to you, Jesus told me to do this, you would be so convinced and your faith would go up giant levels. But it's not happening. People aren't talking, and that's got to change. And I'm just like hoping by being painfully honest, it's inspiring others to be painfully honest. And I've witnessed that within my own family, people telling me about their encounters. I'm like, my God, I wish you spoke up sooner. So.
Yeah, that's.
Honestly.
I mean, it's. I don't know. I wonder how I would react if something like that happened.
It would change a lot, and I just I have had no doubts in everything that I do, and people don't know what drives me. You know, it's like I mean, I have 8 books out. I have like 5 or 6 ready to be published too, and it's like. And I was doing 8 shows a week. I work a full-time job. I have a life, and I watch a lot of Netflix. And it's like, how do you make time? It's like, you know, there's that spark of him that lets me know I'm not on the wrong track. And I know that it's important. I mean, people's souls are at risk. I mean, Hatman, one thing that people don't realize, he can come every night for years at people. And I imagine to know that he'll come in the room and paralyze some of these people, come within an inch of their face, laugh, do a little rape. Who knows? He might rape them, reach into their chest, pull their soul out of their body, threaten to dominate them for an eternity, and laugh about it and throw them back into their body. Imagine having that happening every night. And that's the Hat
Almost
Man.
sounds like an ayahuasca experience that you hear about people having.
Oof. It is a demon of all demons kind of experience. I'm sure there's a lot of varieties of horrible things and odd things that happen to people out there, but this guy is something. And I mean, sometimes he'll drag you right out of your bed, fighting, kicking and screaming physically, and beat the crap out of you. Oh, somebody's sleepy over there. I hear a lot of yawning. Lots of yawning. What's happening?
I think I'm overtaken by what you just said, honestly.
Oh my goodness.
That is amazing.
It's horrifying, and it's like that's why people need to get right with their faith. And you know, the other fword.com, if people go there, now imagine I did this kids book that's called The Fickle Finders Investigates the Other F Word. I wanted to put my cartooning skills to use and to help some of these kids who were not letting their parents know and writing me, "Hi, I'm 10 years old. I see Hatman. What do I do?" Well, now that you told me you're 10, I can't answer you. You know, gosh, kid. But so I did this book, and it's done with the notebook lines like Wimpy Kid and all this stuff, and it's like 200 pages or something. And I waited to see what kids thought of it. And then when I did not hear back from one child, and it was all these adults like, "I really love this. I got my faith better." You know, I'm like, oh my gosh. I need to do an adult version of this. And that's how I wrote The Other F Word, How to Find Faith and Laugh at Yourself While Trying. Because I just figured, you know, how tackle it, one book for kids and one for adults so they can separate and enjoy it equally. But hey, if you like, if you want to read them both, go for it. theotherfword.com. And, you know, all of my books, if you have Prime membership, you could get them for free through Prime. So go for it. Enjoy. And just leave a review, an honest one. Don't be a butthead.
Nice. Well, I mean, I can't recommend the Jesus No Joke enough.
Oh,
and
cool.
What are you working on now? What's the current project?
Oh, you've got to leave me a book review then. You got to promise.
Sure.
Honestly, on Amazon, it's helpful. It really is.
I will admit I'm bad about doing that. You got to hold me to it.
I'm gonna hold you to it because I came on your show. I don't do many interviews.
Yeah.
I really don't. because I do so many shows myself, but you got me at a good time because I had just stopped doing so many of them. But everybody's like, why don't you come on my show? I'm like, I do 8 shows a week. That's why. But what am I working on right now? Well, I just put out another book. It's the Hat Man Book 2, How to Get Rid of Dark Things. What's the subtitle? I didn't even have it sitting here, but it's an adult picture book showing people how to bless their space to keep these dark things out. And it's funny. It's for adults and kids, and it's comics and all. But and then I have a book that I would love to get out. It's just done for fun though. But I have a Shadow People book that I'm about halfway through, and I just haven't picked it up recently because I put out 3 books in the past 3 months. So yeah, I'm a little bit like taking a breather.
You're getting to Nick Redfern levels here.
Oh no, nobody's like my friend Nick. He's a trip. He is a trip.
Yeah,
I don't know what that man is doing. We have the same agent too. He just burns through books. I'm like, dude, you get some sleep? I mean, my God.
Yeah, he's something else.
He's really cool though.
Where can people find you? Like your web presence and all that?
If they go to HeidiHollis.com, HeidiHollis.com, that should connect them to everything. And also, I do a paranormal comic, the Outlanderscomic.com. I think people will find that one funny too. I've had a lot of good feedback. Essentially, Bigfoot living in this forest has an alien moving on one hill, and some human homesteaders move into a haunted cabin on the other. And yeah, so it's fun. So the outlanderscomic.com and the other fword.com. And yeah, and I welcome people who have had any kind of odd experience to write me through my website or at dusoutlander@gmail.com. That's D as in David, A, S as in Sam, outlander@gmail. And if you want just vent or have some friendly advice about anything out of the ordinary, I cover angels to aliens to ghosts to demons and everything. So, and I've even seen a Bigfoot or something. I don't know what the heck it was. So go for it. Feel free.
It's interesting because we're in the second part of this show, second section, we're going to talk a little bit about Bigfoot. So it's interesting that's an interesting synchronicity there, Heidi.
Oh, is it now? I saw one indoors.
What is that? You saw one indoor? Okay. All right. Indoors. No, you can't. We can't let you go till you tell us about this.
I don't mind because this is a crazy. I have told people this and Bigfoot researchers, and they're like, I've never heard of that. I'm like, I am not kidding. Ugh. So I had a paranormal UFO discussion group for, I don't know, 15 years. And this one lady would come to my meetings and she's like, I want you to come to my place because I think it's haunted. I'm like, I'm not a psychic. I really don't know how to help you, you know, but it turned out she lived really close to the library where we held the meetings. And I'm like, well, I'm not going unless my friend comes with me. She's like, okay, I'll go with you because I don't know who this lady is. So we go over to her house and she's walking through, and it's an apartment above a bar in Milwaukee on the east side. So which is like it's a busy like part of the city still. And so we go over there, she's walking me and my friend through, and over here I get some feelings of this, and sometimes I feel something here, and sometimes things move, and we're like, okay. And then we go into her living room and she's talking to me about some of her experiences and whatever, and her living room faced into her kitchen. And the cabinets hung over this bar that went into her kitchen, and so you could see like between the bar, the kitchen counter, and where the cabinets hang low. And my friend is sitting right next to me, and I am not kidding you. Oh, this is icky chills it's giving me. I saw this thing like shimmy into reality. Like you know, like a mirage, like heat rising off a road, and it was just a hairy beast. And I jumped up and I screamed and I stuttered, Bigfoot! My friend jumped up simultaneously and screamed werewolf. The
Whoa.
lady's facing us, and she goes, "What? Where?" And she turns around, and it literally shimmied back into nothingness. I was so shaken. I'm like, "What was that?" And my friend's like, "I don't know." I said, "Did you see its head?" And we could not see its head because the cabinet was hanging. And I was like, that looked like, I don't even know. It was like like the hairy body of I mean, it was an animal, but I don't even know how to describe it. If you look at a bear, but there was like some specks of gray and a little bit tanner and then darker hair. It was a hairy beast, and all I could tell you is, I had to use the bathroom soon after that, and it was on the other side of that, and you could
You
feel
mean you didn't use the bathroom already when you saw that happen?
right. Right. And I had to walk through that kitchen, and I
Bigfoot just
felt like,
shimmers into existence and like, well, now I got to use the bathroom.
oh, dude, I had to I walked along the wall. I felt like I was going to walk into it. You could feel it was there. I'm like, it was weird. And I have asked many of people, I'm like, come on, I can't be the only person, because it wasn't just me. So my friend was there, and to have witnessed this hairy beast. But the closest thing I could say, it was like a Bigfoot, a freaking Bigfoot, in somebody's apartment over a bar in the middle of a city. I mean, why? How and why would that happen? I just don't know. But and then
I don't have the answer to that either.
No, I have told many of people, and I'm like, dude, hook me up to a lie detector, because shoot, just crazy.
Wow.
Crazy. Just crazy stuff. I don't know. But yeah, I've been hoping to find an answer, and to say they're interdimensional, my God, it is. I mean, it just shimmied. It you almost saw the air around it kind of vibrate. I mean, honestly, kind of just I don't know, if you saw the movie Predator and the way it would kind of formulate the air around it and then speckle off into nothing, but it vibrated when it did it. So, yeah, weird. Sleep tight.
Thank you. Hopefully no one's listening to this as they're falling asleep on their headphones.
Yeah, right. Dude.
Well, Heidi,
this
has been awesome. I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been a real delight to speak to you.
Oh, thank you. This was fun, and I
we
should
need to
probably
do it
start
again.
Yeah. I should start doing more radio shows. I'm so bad. I don't even know what to tell you.
It's all good. Yeah.
Busy. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys don't have the boogeyman or Bigfoot come around. Sprinkle some Jesus on it. That's what I tell everybody.
Exactly. We'll get some Jesus sprinkled right on that sucker.
You go get the Hatman book 2, and it'll show you how to bless your space. Hatman and all the ghostlies will leave you alone. So go check it out.
All right. Well, Heidi, stay on the line for us. We're going to close this section out, and we'll be right back on Conspirinormal. Have you seen Bigfoot out there yet?
Not yet. But, I don't know if you saw that post on Facebook about a month ago. I was at that park that I'm currently employed at now, and at the trailhead there's a sign, and if you look at the picture of the trailhead sign, there's 4 symbols. And going from the bottom up, there's a symbol of a bike with a circled with an X going through it, which means no bikes allowed. And then the next little symbol above that one is a dog on a leash, which clearly means all dogs on a leash, please. The third one is just a symbol of a hiker, which means trailhead ahead. And then right above that symbol is a Sasquatch. Now, here is an official trailhead post.
Uh-huh.
That was, and it's on my Facebook. You can see it. I had to take a picture of it.
I think I saw that.
It.
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Yeah, I remember it.
And at first I was kind of laughing at it, going, well, isn't this kind of cute and funny? Then I started thinking, wait a minute. Why is there a silhouette of a creature on an official trailhead sign? What else is back here that I don't know? Now, just to give you a little bit of history, if you don't mind me telling, the last sighting I thought of this particular park I work at was in 1999. It was a while back. However, through research, I found a gentleman who actually I have two serious pieces of information regarding the park I work at. I found a gentleman who did his own investigation because he had heard stories about that park, and he wrote an article in 2002, which was about 3 years later from a sighting that had actually been recorded by someone. In 2002, he caught an image of a creature on a thermal, which I thought was very interesting. And then, if that's not weird enough, I found an individual 2 years ago who saw and I know this is highly debatable, but he says he swore he saw a dog man coming out of the tree line at that park that I also work at.
Uh-huh.
And this was, which is, I'll be the first one to tell you, Sasquatch is scary enough, but Dogman really scares me because there's just, you can play connect.
I mean, I mean, we're talking about a werewolf essentially. I mean, that would scare me too.
I mean, but it goes even deeper than just your, I guess, garden variety terror feeling because, depending on what camp you choose, you can be the physical part of a camp and say, okay, well, Bigfoot can be tied to a Gigantopithecus, or you can take a more biblical step and say, well, no, the Sasquatch can be tied to the Nephilim.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or right. Someone can say, hey, look, the Sasquatch can be tied to, UFO activity. But with Dogman, there is no hypothetical connected dots. And I haven't met anyone, not that I've met a ton, but I've been doing this long enough to know that there's not one person that especially Linda Godfrey up there in Wisconsin, she's interviewed a ton of people and done a ton of research and written a couple of books on this subject, and nobody has anything nice to say about these creatures.
Well, it's interesting to me. I may have said this many times before, but just how Dogman, I think, is now becoming a perfect case of this, because even when she wrote that book, The Beasts of Bray Road, you didn't hear about this. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, through like this whole decade, you started hearing more and more about Dogman this, Dogman that, and people talking about Dogman on YouTube and all these different, like, people talking about these encounters that they were having and all this kind of weird stuff. And then all of a sudden, more and more people start seeing Dogman everywhere. And it's just like, to me, it seems like there's a Tulpa effect going on where people are seeing whatever is manifesting is showing itself as Dogman. Now, the Beast of Bray Road, I don't know, maybe there's something in the local legend or local lore around that area, but it seems like this, like, but my whole theory about, this phenomenon just kind of feeds on itself, essentially.
Right. I completely agree. In my own research, I talked to 3 individuals, not all at once. This was over the course of a few years. But these 3 individuals told me that when they went public, even if it was just sharing with a friend or a family member, when they shared what they had seen, they said Bigfoot, okay, or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
But when the Dogman phenomenon started showing itself more and more, these three same guys said, well, actually, what I saw was a dog man but I only said Sasquatch because I had never heard or even knew the possibility of a cryptid such as the dog man would even exist. One of them was, ironically, this guy that I met, he lives in Wisconsin. He's a hunter, and he during deer season, he had got himself a deer, and he had it was pretty heavy, so it took a while for him to get to his truck, even after dressing it. But when he put it in the back of his truck, he gets inside of his truck, and he's putting the keys in the ignition. He hears this huge thump, and then he feels the weight of whatever is in the back of his truck actually sink his truck like a few inches. You know, like he had some super heavy payload all of a sudden just drop in the bed of his pickup truck. So he looks back, and what he says now is that this thing had, it was the typical pointy ears. It had the head of like a Siberian husky, super muscular, with a very small, thin waist. And this thing just picked up his deer and just took off with it. Now, he waited about three to 6 months to share his story, but with a fellow hunter. But when he did, he said it was a Bigfoot initially because he didn't know what the heck to call it. But over the years, he had heard of Bigfoot, as we all have from time to time, even if you're just the most leisurely of interest. And then he refined his story and said, well, people are talking about the Beast of Bray Road and Dogman this and well, that's actually what I saw. And so, I think the tulpa thing that you had talked about just a minute ago is definitely in effect. And I also think there's something else out there where I think this thing has been seen for a while, but people were actually referring to something else because as weird as Bigfoot is, this thing was even so more weird that they just reverted back to a Sasquatch type of description.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is that Bigfoot just anatomically makes sense, right? I mean, it's basically human-like, 2 arms, 2 legs. But Dogman, this thing that walks on its hind legs, those animals can't walk like that. So it's right. Almost just like people are seeing. I don't doubt. See, that's the thing, is that I never doubt any of this stuff whenever people say, well, I saw this. Maybe there's some people out there that are trying to make money off of it. I mean, that's always a possibility. But,
sure,
when somebody just, Joe Schmo says, well, I saw Dogman, I don't really know what to make of it. It's like you just tend to think, well, but it's just almost like that creature just, it can't exist almost. It's like it's a chimera. And Bigfoot is, right, just a big hairy dude. So it's like it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder.
Yeah, and it might mean that Bigfoot or give more evidence to Bigfoot being something weirder also.
Yeah, exactly. That too.
I absolutely agree with Sir Fiel, what he just said. I was on. I hope you don't mind me mentioning this. I was on a different podcast recently talking about Bigfoot, and this individual asked me, what do I think this creature is? And I told him, I said, 5-10 years ago, I would have told you 100% flesh and blood. That's that. And I told him that over the years, as I have been, the longer I'm in this, the more weird it keeps getting. And I'm talking about Bigfoot, of course. And my opinion has changed. I'm maybe 60-70% flesh and blood, and now my mind is opened up to that remaining 30-40% to something else, and something else that's not physical. And so, like Sir Fiel just said a second ago, it just keeps getting more weird. the more you're into this.
Yeah, because certainly if you look into, we were just talking about this with the previous guest, actually, was that if you look at something like the Chestnut Ridge, that stuff, I mean, how weird is that? And and that's high strangeness all across the board.
Right, that's up there in Pennsylvania, is that correct?
Right, yeah.
Right.
Western Pennsylvania, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So there's.
So anyway, so that circle. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh well, I was gonna ask you about that there's been sightings going on in the Blue Ridge. Just recently.
Right. So yeah, what I was gonna say was just that kind of the whole conversation we had kind of circles around to how strange it is that the park I work at has a silhouette of a creature on a trailhead sign. So, clearly there's something there that I feel I could probably research further and further, but I have to be careful about it. The last thing I want to do is be perceived as some super wacko that just started on a new job. So I've got to kind of, take it. If somebody brings it up, I'll be more than happy to talk about it. But I've got to keep my, I guess I got to keep my findings a little more stealthy.
Yeah.
But
we've got one on the inside now.
Somebody else told me the same thing. But anyway, funny you should say that. You said the same thing. But yeah, so what happened just within the last 10 days, there has been 2 sightings right, and this is not an exaggeration. They are literally right next to each other. I don't know if you guys have access to a map at the moment, but just to kind of paint the picture, there's 80 miles of Appalachian Trail in North Georgia. Starting over there, on the western side of the state where Springer Mountain is, just south of Blue Ridge. And then, of course, it goes all the way up into North Carolina through northeastern Georgia. One of the highest peak on the Appalachian Trail in Georgia, and it's also considered the most iconic, is a place called Blood Mountain. Now, I can't stress this enough to you guys. I am extensively familiar with this area. I have hiked there quite so many times I've lost count. I've spent the night in the woods there. There's a hiker hostel called Mountain Crossings that's there. It's just a truly excellent place. If you're hiking the AT and you want to stay indoors for a couple nights or you need to resupply. And then literally just a few miles north of Blood Mountain and the hiker hostel is Vogel State Park. Both these sightings occurred, I think it was within 2 miles of one another. So if you're looking at a map and you're using Vogel State Park, you can kind of draw a triangle heading southward. One way you're going to run into Blood Mountain, come across you're going to run into the hiker hostel, and then if you go back up, you're going to run back into Vogel State Park. And both those sightings happened within that little triangle that I just put together. Unfortunately, I have not had a chance to talk to the witnesses who saw the creature. The first was a retired couple, and the second one was a woman on her way to work. And I haven't had a chance to speak to either one of those, unfortunately. And I feel bad too because with the new job, I haven't had a chance to actually get up in that area either. But there's definitely something going on there. You just don't have 2 sightings so close. As a matter of fact, the Finding Bigfoot people have been there 2 times over the course of their 10 or 12 seasons, however it is. So it's no secret that that's an active area. But as far as my knowledge goes, this is the first time we've had literally a back-to-back sighting so close to one another in that area.
It sounds really active.
So, like I said, yeah, there's something going on there.
So were these hikers that saw them?
No, these are actually residents. They're in that particular area. They're a little spread out, but there are residences there. And apparently both these people are resident. They live up in that area. They weren't hikers. And that's also interesting because this time of the year is when what they call, on the Appalachian Trail, you're either a Sobo or a Nobo. Nobo meaning you're heading northbound on the trail, and Sobo meaning you're heading southbound. Well, at this time of the year, this is where there is a huge number of Nobos heading northward. And they do that on purpose because if the trail takes 6 to 9 months to do, they'll avoid the snow of the northern states by starting out down here and heading northward. So by the time by the time they hit those states that have snow, well, now it's April or May, and most of it should be gone, and it makes the trip a lot easier. So I find it there's a correlation there. It's just my own little theory, but in previous years past, between the months of January and March is where you'll have anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 hikers just in that little area passing through. And I'm wondering if this creature is following the crowd to pick up scraps, keep an eye on them. Who knows what the motivations of what's going through the heads of these creatures? But nonetheless, now that's just my own personal opinion, but I find it interesting how there's a huge push northbound at this time of the year in that area, and then you have a creature showing up just with two sightings just within a week of each other.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean there is something going on just right there at Vogel State Park and Blood Mountain. There's something else I wanted to share.
Sure.
When I was on your show last time, I had described 2 occurrences that had happened within 30 days of each other back in 2017.
Yeah, I remember
the
that.
one thing, right? The one thing I did not share with you guys is something that happened in 2018, just a few months ago. And I didn't want to take up 2 tons of the show time, of the time allotted for the show. So that's probably why I didn't get into it. But if you want me to, I'll share with what happened with you guys just this past September.
Yeah, please. Yes, absolutely. Please. Yeah.
All right. Buckle your chin straps, fellas, because this one's a barn burner. So I have to provide a little bit of background information. In North Georgia, there is a fantastic museum dedicated to Bigfoot. It's called Expedition Bigfoot.
I hope to be there. I hope to be there in April. Just letting you know.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's right. Anyway, a few years ago, there was a big event there. Bob Gimlin was visiting the museum. And, of course, I went there because I wanted to meet the man, meet the legend, which I got to. That was a great experience to meet him. One of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And the place was packed with people. So I took it upon myself to start introducing myself just as a, casual, not so serious investigator. I purposely, introduced myself like that because, I'm nothing special. I have a lot of knowledge about this because I've just been doing it a long time, but, I don't like to single myself out as anything special out there. So, but nonetheless, I was introducing myself, telling them what I do, what I've researched, what I've found over the years. And I met a young man there. I'm not going to disclose his name. Really nice guy, smart guy. We got to talking, and we decided to keep in touch after the event was over with through Facebook. So a few months go by, and I get a message from this individual, and he says he has an encounter. And so I message him back. I'm like, wow, tell me about it. So he gives me all the details, the area, what happened, et cetera, et cetera. And so nonetheless, I was, quite intrigued. And I said, well, keep in touch with me. some time goes by, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, and he messages me again and says, listen, I had another sighting. And I'm like, good gosh, where are you going? What are you doing? And, please inform me. So he told me, and I was like, wow, well, next time you decide to investigate, let me know, because you seem to be, hitting some areas where you're having an encounter with activity. And some more time goes by. I didn't hear from him for a pretty good while, almost a year. And then in July, just this past July of 2018, he sends me a message. And he says, listen, I had another encounter. He says, but this time it was in a place that's not as far as North Georgia, which is very significant, and I'll get into the details about that in just a minute. He says, and you don't have to hike very far to start getting activity. And I said, well, okay, I'm up. In my message that I gave to this guy, I said, okay, I'm up for it. I'm interested. But to be perfectly honest with you guys, I didn't believe him. I'm like, there's no way this one person can have this much luck with the, with this kind of, with these kind of encounters. But, I was open-minded, so I said, okay, and I'll come out on this particular night at this particular time. I'll meet you up, and we'll go. You'll have to forgive me, fellas. I'm not comfortable disclosing, of course, his name, but I don't want to disclose the location either.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
But nonetheless, we meet up, and it's about 7:00 at night, and it's July, so there's still about an hour and a half of sunlight left. And we meet we meet in a place, and then we have to drive off onto a gravel road that I guess the Forest Service people use to get to wherever they're going to maintain the trail of this particular location. And the first thing that happens is he stops the car and he says, look to your left. So I look, and there's a humongous tree structure right there to the left of the gravel road, inside the tree line, about 20 yards. Now, I'm the first one to stand up and say that I'm a huge skeptic when it comes to tree structures. However, when I got up close to this thing, I was completely blown away, because these were big, huge branches that had been placed to form a letter X. I even took a picture of it. And what convinced me that this was made by something rather than tree fall is that I did a circular perimeter of about 50 yards away from that tree structure, and there was no connectable root system to either of those things. So that really got my attention. But here's what happens next. As I'm taking the picture of the tree structure, I hear it clear as day, Adam. I hear this whoop, and it was clear. It was the same kind of whoop you hear in other audio recordings all over the country. Well, I stood up, I looked at him, he looked at me, and I said, did you hear that? And he says, yep. So, needless to say, I walked out of the woods there at that point. So here I am, I'm starting to get a little freaked out, because there's this huge, purposely made letter X in the middle of two trees about 10 feet high, and then I hear a whoop. But anyway, we continue on. We get to the trailhead, and I think we had only hiked, excuse me, we had only hiked about, I'd say maybe a half a mile in, not far at all. And what happens next is this, I can only describe this, it was a scream that sounded like an insane mad woman. Like, ay, 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 ay. And
oh my God, I would be running out of there, man. I'd be like, come on, no.
Here's the thing. This happened during the week, Adam. So there were people were either, working or in school. Well, Well, I'm sorry. I have to backtrack. When this was proposed that we come to this area, the proposal was in July over Facebook, but it didn't happen until September. So the kids were back in school. So the reason why I make a point of that is that when we arrived to that trailhead, there was nobody there. No other hikers. There were no cars, no bikes, no nothing. It was just me and him, or so we thought. So here comes this hideous, loud, and I just stopped. He stopped, and I said, okay, maybe we should start heading back to the car. So he's like, it's your call, Dan. And I said, well, I would feel a little more comfortable heading back to the car. I mean, this thing sounded like, normally in these situations I reference a character out of a movie, but I can't think of one right now. But just picture this ear-piercing mad woman scream coming at you. So as if that wasn't enough, we turn around, start heading back to the car, and here's what happens next. Here come the rocks, Adam, right out of the tree line, and the rocks start coming our way, and I got unbelievably frightened and angry all at the same time. I turned to the guy I was with, and I said, "That's it." I said, "That is it. We are leaving. We get out of here right now." And needless to say, we double timed it back to the car. And this is where I got really scared, because we still have to drive off this gravel road to get out of here. And I'm thinking, if this thing is close enough to start pelting us with small rocks, shit, this thing's gonna walk right in front of our car. But thankfully that didn't happen. But as if all of that wasn't enough, here's what really freaks me out, is that this area where all this happened is literally only a 45-minute walk from a really busy intersection with restaurants and strip malls and a college and everyday life that we know it. And it's only a 45-minute walk from where all this occurred.
Very close to an urban area. I mean, that's going to be pretty common. I mean, I'm basically from that part of the country myself. And when you have, Eastern United States, there's towns everywhere, even in the middle of the mountains. It's amazing that stuff like that can happen so close to there. But also too, I don't know if you heard our last show that we just did with Tim Swartz on Jeff the Talking Mongoose. About the poltergeist cases
this morning. From the 30s, correct?
From the 30s, yeah. Credits where credit is due. Josh and Sarai and Tim have talked about this on Where Did the Road Go a lot. And this whole idea of kind of like the wilderness poltergeist. You could, everything you just said that happened, you could explain in that way too. You could say the structures were built in that way because poltergeists do that. The vocalizations, the sounds, that could be, that could come from a poltergeist. Like Jeff and the Bell Witch, they were both speaking poltergeists. The rock throwing, objects being thrown, that could be also something else. That could also be like a poltergeist as well. So it's almost like you could explain that. You could explain it just as easily as that without there being kind of like this physical creature. And that's the kind of stuff that really fascinates me when there's that cross pollination there between the two. That's quite an experience.
And it's not on the Appalachian Trail. It's not even that far north Georgia. It's North Georgia, but not that North Georgia.
Like pretty close to the Metro Atlanta area, I would assume.
I tell you what, I'll give you a general area. So if you want to look it up, you're more than welcome to. What I described, what just happened this past September, happened just east of Emma-Colola Falls.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Yeah. I got a good idea of where that is. Yeah.
So,
interesting stuff, Dan. Keep doing it. Keep going out there. Maybe we'll get out there with you and Bigfoot hunt. But we're bringing rifles.
I would love that.
Hey, see if you can get some audio, man. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
I'm sure you're documenting this all really good, anyways. But getting an audio clip of some shrieks or something, that'd be wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm. Anybody who listens to this show tonight is gonna say Dan is probably kicking himself, and you know what? I am, because now I've had 2 experiences where, I had a chance to record something and I didn't. That first one, the very first thing that ever happened was that Yahoo howl up in North Georgia. But it was 3:00 in the morning and I was half asleep and I knew it was a creature, but I just turned around and went back to sleep anyway. And then, of course, on this particular one that happened just this past September, what I just described, I was so frightened. The last thing on my mind was pulling out a recorder and trying to, I just wanted to get the heck out of there so fast.
Yeah,
and what? I was, to be perfectly upfront, I was armed and I still didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
It's otherworldly.
Yeah, it gave you this feeling of dread, which is another interesting part of it.
Oh, it was awful.
I know there's all that talk about like the infrasound and how like apparently these creatures give off infrasound, but we were just talking about shadow people and hat men and all this kind of, and the feeling of dread that comes from them. Could it be just as easily that we're dealing? It's just fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to get into this on the 250th episode with Josh and Tim a little bit, I think, because they're working on their book right now about kind of more of a paranormal Bigfoot aspect.
Do you guys know who Ron Moorhead is?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Okay. The Patterson-Gimlin film of 1967 is considered the best video footage of the creature, even though it's been 50 years. And in which I completely agree with. And in my own opinion, I would say that the best audio recordings of these creatures was done by Ron Moorhead. And
that's the Sierra sounds, the samurai
the
speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
weird, man.
And,
it's weird. It's weird shit.
He came out with a book last year called Quantum Bigfoot, where he actually, in a very, it's going to sound a little weird, but in a kind of an easy way, in an easy to understand way, he lays out in that book certain certain quantum theory physics, how those creatures use vibration to explain some of the more supernatural characteristics associated with these creatures. And I found that extremely fascinating because I read excerpts of the book and at first I went into I was reading it going, I'm just going to end up throwing this away, and I did. I was extremely fascinated, especially the way he lays it out. So if there's another option of trying to apply some sort of explanation to the more supernatural side of these things, the quantum theory that he lays out in that book is really interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Maybe even look into getting him on the show. That's fascinating.
Now, you'll have to forgive me for this, but there's a little bit more to that sighting or to that occurrence. Now, I don't know if we got into this or not, but I am a very dedicated missing 411 follower.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that, right?
Yeah, we did, and I broke the most cardinal rule. I went back to that site in North Georgia by myself. And I really wish I hadn't. And nothing, that stick structure was still there. I didn't get rocks thrown at me. I didn't get a whoop, but let me tell you what happened. This happened about a month. This is a month later. So now this is October of 2018. So not that long ago. But I broke the cardinal rule. I went by myself because I had to go back, and I wanted to just get more, even though it frightened me. And I walk in. Same thing happened. I wasn't that far. I was maybe a mile in this time. And What I heard scared me again, and what I heard was a tree knock. But here's the thing, Adam. If you've been in the woods for a lengthy part of time or for a good part of your life, like I have, you know what deadfall sounds like.
Sure.
You know what a tree toppling over because it's overly weighted with snow or rain sounds like. But this sounded like two Louisville sluggers going at it. It was like
yeah.
And I was, of course, I got super frightened, so I immediately turned around and headed back out. But the very last thing that happened is there's a super sharp curve in the trail where just before you get to the trailhead, or if you're going the other way, as soon as you enter the trail, it's maybe 100 yards, and there's a 90-degree turn. As I'm getting out of there, frightened out of my mind after hearing that knock, excuse me, right there at that 90-degree turn was a tree that had been twisted and bent completely 90 degrees, that had not been like that just a half hour before when I was there. So, let me say this. Anybody out there is more than welcome to disagree with me. I don't have a problem with that. But when I went back there by myself, Adam, which I will never do again, I can say 100% I was being watched, because something
you had that feeling. Yeah.
Well, in order to break that, to twist and bend that tree, something would have had to flank me, go behind me, and get way ahead of me in order to do that, because that tree was not like that when I entered the trail. But then all of a sudden, as I'm exiting, it's twisted and broken 90 degrees. So something was watching me, something was following me, and I will never do that again. But alone. I'm sure I've been watched a lot, and I just don't know it. But I'm sure as heck not going by myself anymore. So that's that's what happened in September and October of 2018.
Okay, I got a question for you.
Shoot.
Do you see any correlation between this phenomenon with Bigfoot and Native American mounds?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to say I'm not as well versed, and I should be, and that's something I'm going to work on. I am not as educated in many of the what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not as educated in the Native American traditions regarding the existence of this creature as I should be. As a matter of fact, I've always been one that would say they probably have more answers to what we're looking for with these creatures than we probably realize.
I agree.
We just haven't paid enough attention to them.
And a lot of it is probably more mystical and spiritual based than it is reality or physical reality based.
Right, that's right.
What about in proximity to or something like that? I think Adam's getting at that too.
Yeah.
In proximity to some old sites, graveyards, burial mounds, burial plots, all stuff like that. Is there anything? You see any relationship?
I know. I'm not quite sure. Only because my knowledge base hasn't expanded that far quite yet into that specific realm. I mean, one of the largest creatures. I don't know if you guys know about this, but one of the closest encounters with one of the largest creatures ever recorded was here in Georgia, right behind a cemetery. in southeast Georgia towards Savannah. This gentleman, this creature came out of some super tall grass. He was crouching down, and this guy basically almost ran right into his chest. I mean, he was literally only 3 feet away, and this creature stood about 10 feet tall. And the guy was frightened, but the creature just looked at him and turned around and walked off. And this happened right behind the cemetery in southeast Georgia. So there's an example there that, where a creature may be inhabiting or maybe residing in some forest area that's near in this case, a cemetery rather than a Native American burial ground. The only other case that I researched was a gentleman in West Virginia who was building a log cabin for himself to have a place to stay during hunting season. And it was a progression where he started having activity as he was laying down the foundations of his log cabin. And the more he kept working, the more activity kept progressing. First there were sounds, then there were rocks being thrown at him. A week later, when he was, putting up the logs, the more he kept building, the worse it kept getting. And apparently this, when he reported this to authorities, the authorities immediately said, well, you shouldn't be building that there because that's near a Native American ground. Now, what that ground is for, I don't know. It could be burial. It could be something more along the lines of a Native American place of worship. So that's the only really good example that I know of where someone was infringing on a Native American burial site that apparently upset this creature.
Yeah, good. That's real informative. Me and Adam have been kind of throwing around these ideas. There's this rare book. It's called The Rebirth of Pan, and but it really goes into the ideas of these crypto creatures being just some manifestations of the earth spirit. It gets a little new agey, but it's a real good compilation of strange crypto stuff and archaeological.
Good old Jim Brandon. Oh, Dan, thank you so much, man. My brain is fried after this.
that was some really good radio, though, man.
Yeah,
we really like having you, tell us the stories, and you're a really good storyteller.
We had quite a few good sound bites in this show, actually. So,
thank you. I appreciate it. I love coming on with you guys.
Oh, thank you. And hey, we're gonna close the show out now, if you're cool with that, man.
Yeah.
So, just join us for that, and stay on the line for us. But I want to thank Heidi Hollis for coming on, Seraphiel, you recording the show, and having our backup system and all that.
Yeah, backups for backups.
I'm not gonna hedge my bets, but we should have an interesting show for you next week. Yeah. So, but we will be back next time, guys, for more conspiracy and paranormal goodness on Conspirinormal. And we didn't lose this show.